How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Miss Franchesca Ramsey. Now, I've done a few responses to her videos in the past, and I've said that I actually like her. I like her because they do not copyright claim my videos. They allow me to get my point of view out there. I think she's pretty, but I think that her mind is just completely warped, and my job is to maybe just send this out to her to fix her point of view and also to give a counter narrative, because I know she has a following. Some people actually like what she says. A lot of her videos get played in colleges. So you got young, impressionable kids or young adults that have not really found their way yet. They're listening to this and thinking it's the gospel, but I want people to be able to hear her video. And then when they go home in the privacy of their dorm room or whatever they are, I want them to try to search for it and then find my video to get a debriefing of sorts. So what we're going to do right now is go ahead and jump straight into it. This video is about the word cuck, its origins, and why it's used. There's a lot of obs, obics, and is referenced in this video, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Throughout the video, I'll stop it at certain points to give you my 2 cents, and that's pretty much how it's going to rock. So without further ado, go ahead and roll it.
Pack hundreds of years of racism, sexism, and misogyny into just 4 letters? C-U-C-K.
Oh boy, here we go.
If you've been online recently, you might have noticed the word cuck being thrown around a lot.
I have seen it quite a bit. Yes, you're correct, Miss Ramsey. So far.
Not to be confused with that male chicken. You're a man who identifies as a feminist? Cuck.
Well, the reason why the word cuck gets used when you're talking about male feminists is because of some of their rhetoric that they spew. I don't want to spoil the video for anybody watching, because I'll explain why this term is used for a guy like this as we progress. But there is a specific reason for this. But let's keep going.
Don't like Donald Trump? Cuck. Someone who likes a certain MTV web series host that you don't like? Cuck.
See, that was personal. I know you've been reading some of the comments. I know you've been looking at some of the response videos, including mine, and you're like, oh, okay, they're calling people that like my videos cuck, this, that, and the third. So that was a personal thing. I do understand, but let's keep moving on.
To understand the history of cuck, look no further than its 2 delightfully intertwined components, misogyny and racism.
Now I'm interested to see how you're going to tie misogyny and racism into the word cuck in the way it's used currently today, because it is very important.
Misogyny and racism, the key ingredients in America's favorite sandwich.
That was nasty.
Now, before we get into cuck's modern usage, we have to go all the way back to the innocent cuckoo bird. Cuckoo birds commonly lay their eggs in other birds' nests and leave them there to be raised. During the Middle Ages, that otherwise benign bird became a symbol for a husband with an unfaithful wife. From cuckoo came cuckold, which literally means a man whose wife has slept with another man and then raises a child who is not his. Long before guys on Reddit got a hold of the phrase, cuckolds were a staple in English literature. Shakespeare loved to use men's fear of becoming a cuckold as a plot point. Cuckolds even happen in rap music. Take Kanye West's Gold Digger. 18 years, and on her 18th birthday, he found out it wasn't his.
It's not really appropriate to talk about rap lyrics when you're talking about the word cuck, because that has zero to do with the way it's used right now today. You can talk about the etymology of a word and its origin and how it came to become an actual word in the English language, but that has nothing to do with the way it's used right now today, right? Because let's look at the word holler. Holler, you know, screaming loud, talking to somebody, you hollering. But the way we use it in slang or whatever you want to call it is just to try and talk to a young lady, trying to holler at her. So the etymology is not always the equivalent to the actual meaning of the word as it's used in modern language today. But let's keep going.
Over time, the shortened version of the word cuck became more common, and that's likely because of 2 of America's favorite pastimes, racism and pornography.
Boy, this is gonna get a little X-rated, so if you got any kids, you might want to cover their ears. I'm gonna try to keep it as clean as possible, but this is a little murky part.
Cuckold, or cuck, became used to refer to a genre of porn where husbands, usually white, watch their wives have sex with another man, usually black. Not only is she cheating on you, but she's cheating with a man who's perceived as racially inferior.
See, nah, you're not really understanding what's going on. See, the whole thing with cucks and the cuckold porn is that the cuck himself, the husband, he feels inferior to the black male or the bull. That's what that is. It's nothing really to do with the black male being inferior. That may be how people on the outside view it. They're looking at it and saying, oh, this animal, whatever, is ravaging the man's wife. That's one thing. That's an opinion that's had. But to the guy, to the actual cuck, he's thinking that he is inferior. He feels like he is not worthy of his wife. He feels like he can't measure up to the male. And he feels like he's not enough. He can't satisfy his wife. That is the whole point of that term being used to describe that person. It's a disparaging term used against him. But we'll talk about how it ties into modern usage a little bit later as you talk about it some more, Miss Franchesca Ramsey.
But what leads many guys to use the term isn't just its racist undertones, but, surprise, rampant sexism. Now, if you really want to know where the modern usage of cuck comes from, remember that pickup artist scene from the early 2000s? That mystery guy? I mean, it's better if you don't, but we gotta talk about it. The pickup artist community's main goal was to teach socially awkward men how to lure women using a variety of manipulative techniques.
That's kind of not really the truth. We're talking about manipulative techniques and hypnotizing. A lot of the pickup artist community or whatever, they just try to give men confidence to be able to go out there and talk to women. From the beginning of time, men have used different things, different ways of speaking, different techniques to be able to catch a woman's eye, whether it's the money they have, whether it's an ability to be able to be funny and knock her loose and get her to be, on your side, basically to make her feel comfortable. Those things have always been used since the beginning of time. But a lot of guys are not confident in themselves, or they just don't have those tools. So that is the whole purpose of the PUA community, etc. When talking about hypnotizing and stuff like that and manipulative, that's kind of loaded language, honestly.
So when it comes to men, pickup artists like to divide them into alphas and betas. An alpha is a guy who totally gets all the sexy desires because his controlling and dominant personality is so attractive to women. That was sarcasm, by the way.
Come on, Franchesca. I know you're a woman. Don't act like you don't like masculine men. Don't act like you don't. I'm not sure what your husband, what he got going on, but don't act like you don't like masculine men. And maybe if not you, maybe you just, you feel like you are a superwoman or whatever, but the average woman, they like masculine men. That's why this whole brownie paper towel commercial kerfuffle was a big, a stupid mess, because the reason why the brawny guy was on the front. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna kind of go off on a little tangent and give you a short story. Brownie paper towels for many years had this, lumberjack looking dude, strong, handsome looking dude on the cover of the paper towels. And then it was like this PR thing that was done to change it into a woman wearing a lumberjack uniform. And they were saying the reason why they did that is because man was on the cover for many years and now it's time to change. But they don't understand, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they don't understand the reason why the man was on the cover of the paper towels is because women usually buy those kinds of things for the household, and they were attracted to the rugged, rough looking guy on the actual cover. It's the same reason why, but you go into a store, you go into Walmart, and you buy underwear, it's an underwear model with abs and everything else. Why is that like that? It's because women usually buy those kind of things for their house, for their husband, and for their children. So don't act like you don't like masculine men. Maybe if not you, the majority of women do. They like deep voices. They like tall, dark, and handsome. That's just what it is. So stop playing games.
Meanwhile, a beta is a guy who's too nice to be an alpha and supposedly is always being used by women and never gets laid.
Beta is, in my point of view, that's described as a man that just is not really confident in himself. A man that's just not really up to par with an alpha. And it just is what it is. That's just nature. That can exist with women as well. There are alpha women and also beta women. That just is how it is. You have more dominant personalities and personalities that are not as dominant. That's just nature. That exists in animals, that exists in human beings, that exists in general.
Being taught to respect women is referred to as betafying, and a beta is also often referred to as, you guessed it, a cuck.
You can respect women without being a cuck, without being a beta. I mean, alpha males typically respect women. Respecting women is not necessarily, congruent with you being an alpha or a beta. It's all about you personally, what kind of man you are. You can respect women and still be strong. You can respect women and also be weak. So it all depends on you as an individual. So you saying, oh, when you respect women, you're a beta. That's not true. That's just completely false. It's not even about respecting women. A lot of cucks do not respect women because they don't respect themselves. Well, we get to that a little bit later.
Essentially, to call someone a cuck is to imply that they aren't a real or strong man, as if there's only one way to be a man. Oh my God, masculinity is so fragile.
Nah, it's not even about being strong or weak. I mean, human beings, we all know that there are people that are strong and people that are weak and people that are in the center. It's not about being strong or weak, really. It's about you as an individual. How do you behave? What is your behavior like? A lot of cucks, basically what they do is they self-deprecate. They hate themselves and they look in the mirror. They hate being a man. They despise, they resent being a man. They wish they could be more like a woman. I seen some of these memes, and this might be a little TMI for you or NSFW, but I saw this meme that's on the screen before you. This guy holding this sign. I'm not sure if it's true or false. It might be a fake sign, but I think it's pretty true. I've seen it a lot of different places. The guy's holding a sign talking about, I need feminism because I want to enjoy my woman's strap on without feeling less manly or something to that extent. That right there is a cuck. See, the reason why he does not feel manly is because it's not natural for a man to pleasure himself in that fashion. He's supposed to be pleasing his girlfriend, not to be pleasing himself, if you get my drift. He feels wrong because it is wrong. Now, I'm not saying that homosexuality or something like that is just wrong in general, but it is not normal. The majority of people are not homosexual. Only like 5% of the nation at best, probably about 2% of the nation is actually homosexual. The rest of the 98% are not. So when you're talking about this movement to make men less like men, that is not a natural occurrence. It's just not. There are some men that identify more as women or whatever, but that's not really a natural thing. A lot of that is just mental problems. And the cuckishness goes into other things beyond just how the person feels on the inside. You got a lot of white males that talk about, oh, white male patriarchy is the problem. Like one example I'll give you is I've seen pictures of white men on their hands and knees, chained around their neck with their family, with their wife and their children. Signs on their body talking about, I apologize for slavery. That right there is a cuck. No man should ever allow himself or his wife or his children to be in that position unless they just got captured, they're prisoners of war, they had a gun to their head or something like that. You should never volunteer to be in that circumstance, in that situation. A lot of what cucks do is humiliate themselves. They get off on self-humiliation. They hate themselves. They hate their race. They just don't like being men. And a lot of them are just white men. And it's not even all the way their fault. I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but a lot of it's not even their fault. They hear videos like this from Miss Franchesca Ramsey. They hear a lot of the mainstream media. They hear a lot of things that go against the so-called white male patriarchy. They grow up that way. They get inundated with it over and over and over and over again, to the point where they grow up, they look in the mirror and hate what they see, and then they become a cuck. And a lot of these cucks go into public office and they do things that are to spite what they are, which is white males. And that in turn impacts the whole nation because a lot of white males are in power position and they are the majority. So if you are in the majority and you have a lot of power positions, but you hate yourself, you hate your power position, and you want to do everything you can to go against what you are inherently, that's going to cause the whole society to collapse. The same thing is happening over in Germany, where you got all these refugees that are allowed to flood in and basically turn the women into Islamic brides, covering them up, raping them or whatever. And it's like, oh, it's no problem. It's racist to deport them and stuff like that. That's what causes men to be totally confused. They might get raped by a Somali migrant themselves and then feel sorry for the guy that has to get deported. Stuff like that makes you a cuck, and that's why being a cuck is wrong. But we still have more video to go, so let's keep going.
In many ways, Trump has become the ideal alpha for many men. His ability to succeed not in spite of, but because of his arrogant and sexist behavior is sadly inspirational to them. Okay, great. Moving on.
How is he sexist? What did Trump do that was actually sexist? You're talking about comments that were made in private. I mean, come on. I know you're not a virgin, Miss Ramsey, so I know you and your husband may have had some pillow talk. I'm not really sure about him, if he's a cuck or whatever, but the average woman and the average man, when they're together in the bedroom or whatever it is, they have discussions that are different than what would be had elsewhere. And the same thing if you just with friends and y'all talking about things, you may talk about things in a braggadocious kind of manner, not for nothing other than just you're talking and that's it. How is that sexist to talk in a certain way that may offend somebody that was done in private? It doesn't make any sense. I could see if he went to the White House and was in front of the podium and said some of the things he said in private, that's different. But when you're talking about private conversations, how can that be classified as sexist? I don't understand.
So why do people even like to say cuck so much? Because of power. To call someone a cuck is an attempt to wield power over them. It implies they're weak and cowardly, not strong and brave like the person slinging insults from their computer screen. That was also sarcasm.
Like I said, you can be weak, you can be timid, you can be somebody that's not as strong as the alpha or whatever without being the cuck.
But is it even an effective insult? Maybe, if upholding white supremacy and hypermasculinity is important to you. Otherwise,
How do we get to white supremacy? How did we get there? I didn't even hear that mentioned. Like, where did the white supremacy come from? I didn't see anybody do this in the video or in the pictures that you had here. I didn't see clips of this right here. I guess it's the new white supremacy sign. I didn't see that at all. So I'm just wondering, where is this whole thing about white supremacy coming from? How did that get snuck in there in the end? And hypermasculinity, how was hypermasculinity to just enjoy being a man, to love yourself, to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I love me. I love who I am. I enjoy being a man. And that's it. How is that hypermasculinity? Stuff like this makes men not want to be men if they buy into it. That's why I'm here to give a counter narrative.
cuck becomes a lot less powerful when you realize its racist and sexist origins. Like most insults, cuck says a lot more about the person using it than the person being called one. We'll see you next week right here on Decoded.
Oh boy, that was exhausting. Yeah, that was crazy. You know, at the end of the day, as I close, that was the end of the video. As I close, I just want to say that the word cuck is used kind of in a funny way normally, but it's really just meant, again, I repeat myself for the last time, is used to represent somebody that does not like who they are as a man, that wants to go against everything that men stand for, that wants to do things that will topple society because he does not like himself as a man. He is against masculinity. He is against being a male. He wants to become more like a woman. And at a certain point, that can't be. Women cannot become more like men, and men cannot become more like women, because there has to be a balance there. And the balance is determined by your genetics, by your chromosomes, XX or XY. That is it, and that is all. If you are a man, you need to be a man, whether you weak, whether you strong, whether you in the center. I'm not going to say I'm like the strongest man in the world. I'm not a coward or a weak person either. But even if you're a coward, if you're weak, then that's fine. You have your own little lane, but don't try to interfere with all men as a whole because you don't feel secure in yourself as a man. And don't try to interfere. Just stay to the sideline and let those of us that are brave, those of us that are able to do things, let us do, and let you just be in the back. You may have an alternative role. There is a role for everybody on earth, but to be a cuck, to be against masculinity, to be against men, that is just completely the wrong thing to do. Being a cuck really is like being the male version of a feminist. Feminist, but it's almost like the reverse as far as their actions. It's like they both hate who they are as the gender that they are, that they were born with. Cucks a lot of times want to become more feminine. They want to act like being masculine is somehow wrong and having more feminine traits is the correct thing to do. And women that are feminists, a lot of them want to have more masculine traits. They want to be on the front of the brawny package with a flannel shirt on, holding a hammer and a sickle or whatever it is. They want to be masculine. They want to wear the pants. They want to make decisions. They want to do things that men typically do. They want to lead the household. They want to be the ones in charge. But who's going to be the one that support? Who's going to be the one that has the children, raises the children? Who's going to be the nurturer? Who's going to be the first teacher? Who's going to be the voice of reason? Who's going to be the peacemaker? Who's going to be all of that if all women become more like men? And if men become more like women, who's going to be the logical thinker? Who's going to be the one that's cool under pressure? Who's going to be the one that's the leader? Who's going to be the one that protects? Who's going to be the one that provides? Who's going to be the one that can lead society going forward? You need both energies, right? It's like yin and yang. You got to have both, and it's got to be in balance. And you start to get off balance when you have people like the guy holding a sign up talking about enjoying his girlfriend's sex toy. You don't want stuff like that infecting the society, because at the end of the day, all it's going to do is run society into the ground, and you would not be able to have a strong nation going forward. So that's pretty much all I got to say. The word cuck is appropriately used for these people that do not like who they are as men and want to ruin society because they have their own personal insecurities. So I'm going to keep on using it. I use it sparingly because it should not be thrown around every 5 minutes, but sometimes it is an appropriate thing to say. What say you? Do you think that I'm on point with my assertion? Do you think that what I've said is correct here so far about the word cuck and how it's actually used and etc.? Or do you think Miss Franchesca Ramsey is correct that her explanation of the etymology of the word is the way that the word is used today? It's about white supremacy. It's about the patriarchy. It's about toxic masculinity. It's about all these things she said. Whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.
Cuck.